So welcome. Welcome, everyone. I am Erin Wu, and I'm an MBSR teacher and trainer at Brown University in the MBSR program. And I am delighted to welcome you today to this program on beginner's mind. So just a little bit of an overview to kind of give a map of where we'll be going today and a little bit of logistics. So I'll offer some brief thoughts on what beginner's mind means to me in this moment. There's no one thing beginner's mind means, and I don't mean to try to capture it all, but I'll offer some thoughts on beginner's mind, and then we'll engage in a practice in which you'll be invited to bring beginner's mind to a short 15-minute practice. And then we'll have a chance to check in after that practice, and would love to hear from some of you about what you noticed during that period of practice. And then depending on how much people want to share or how many questions you all have, if there's time remaining at the end, I'm happy to take any questions if any of you are interested in learning more about our program. So there may or may not be time for that. So that's a little bit of an overview of how we'll use our time together, and really appreciate you gathering in this way. Last time when I offered one of these programs a few months ago, I asked, so how many of you thought thought when you signed up, oh yeah, really looking forward to this. And then in the moment thought, oh, I don't know if I have time. And a lot of hands went up. So I'll ask again, how many of you thought, maybe I'm not even going to show up today. I don't have time. Anyone? Yeah. Yeah. So appreciate that you did make the time. So if you are in a position and comfortable turning on your camera, it's great to see faces. There is a way in which mindful practice can be very solitary. Sometimes we close our eyes or look down, and so we're in our own experience. And yet there's something about being together in a community. So if you're comfortable turning on your camera, that would be lovely. And for purposes of the recording, only my face will show up on the recording, so you don't need to worry about that. And then an invitation to keep your microphone on mute when you're not speaking. You're welcome to unmute yourself and ask a question or share something at any point. It's not to silence anyone, but if everyone's unmuted, there's a lot of background noise and it can be distracting. So yeah, that's a bit of an overview. And so turning now to this theme of beginner's mind. In my mind, beginner's mind, this possibility of bringing beginner's mind to mindfulness practice it's really exciting news. It's this recognition that mindfulness practice can become stale, and what was helpful in practice maybe early on no longer works, and practice can just become dull and lifeless. And this recognition of beginner's mind, when I'm reminded of it, it's kind of like this, oh, something else is possible. Beginner's mind, for reference, some of you I know, I'm sure know this, but for others that might be new, there are 9 foundations of mindfulness, attitudinal foundations that Jon Kabat-Zinn identified, and beginner's mind is one of them. Some of them are more challenging attitudes to bring to practice. Things like non-judging, non-striving, acceptance, they can be quite challenging. Beginner's mind can too, depending on where you are, but sometimes just a reminder that it's possible can really invigorate a practice. So to start with, I'd like to invite you all to open up the chat and share a few words about how you understand beginner's mind. There's a lot of wisdom in this group, undoubtedly. I know some of you from past classes, so would love to hear some of your thoughts. So if you'd like to open up the chat and type a little bit about your understanding. A fresh curiosity that's very succinct and to the point. Being open. I'm pausing to see if anyone else is typing. Welcoming all that is. So welcoming all that is definitely a quality that might fall more under acceptance. Could be a part of beginner's mind too, though. Open to wonder and the unknown, curious without judging, taking a fresh look, lacking or ignoring preconceptions. Appreciate the framing. Not having preconceived notions, no expectations, being curious and open, a style or approach to practice. Unbiased, yes. Beginner's mind to me means that I don't have to feel bad when my mind repeats old habits. I can begin again, starting again, wonder, yes. So I knew there was a lot of wisdom in this group. All of these are pointing to this thing that we call beginner's mind, realizing you don't know everything like Socrates. Going into the world with fresh eyes and open-mindedness, treating each moment as a new moment to practice. Yeah, all of this true. So one more, a state of presence that reflects the experience of those who are starting to meditate for the first time. Yeah, one way of looking at it. So just before this, I taught an MBSR class, and it's our week 5, and I like to use a quote in that class, which I think is very apt for beginner's mind. It's a Chinese proverb, and it goes like this. The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today. So some of you got at this, like this possibility of starting over with a fresh start. So yes, it's great if I've been practicing well for 20 years. And right in this moment is the very next best time to practice. In this moment right here today, I can start afresh with a new beginner mind. And so to me, that's really heartening because I don't know about you, but my mind goes in all sorts of different directions. I have all sorts of different ways in which practice happens. My practice becomes stale sometimes, and I can get frustrated. I can think, why am I even bothering? And then there's a possibility of any moment of reconnecting with actually what's here. All of those are concepts and thoughts, but what's here in this moment. So when my children were young, they are now 19 and 21. When they were young, we would go for a walk, and it could be a little frustrating because I would think we were going for a walk with a destination in mind. We're going to get to the park, for example. They would need to stop like every seemingly 3 seconds or every minute because they would see something on the ground or in the tree, and they need to stop and investigate. They were new in this world, and everything was a wonder. A number of you wrote about wonder in the chat. Everything was wonder. A stone on the ground, the way the wind was moving through the tree, a flower, everything was a curiosity. And they would bend over with the fullness of their beings investigating. So this is something of what beginner's mind is. And yet, as I look around, it looks like we're all adults here, no toddlers or 3-year-olds. And it's actually really helpful that every time I take a walk, I don't have to look at everything and learn about it. The fact that I know something of what a rock is, and I can pass by rocks, and I know what a pen is when I see it, it is really helpful. I can give those things less time and focus on other times. This is the way the mind works, and it's quite useful. There's nothing wrong with the shorthand ways in which we approach much of what life presents. We can't look at everything with fresh eyes every time we encounter it. So these shortcuts are quite useful. And we shortcut a lot, though. So they have their usefulness, but perhaps we extend the usefulness beyond the way it's usefulness. because there are many ways in which we make assumptions about all sorts of things. And we look through life, someone wrote about bias. We look through life with all sorts of biases based on a lifetime of experiences, based on how we were born into this world, in the particular bodies, particular skin color, particular country, with religious beliefs of our families, social conditioning, political beliefs, all sorts of things that physically we're born into, that we absorb through our environments that create these filters and biases and ways of perceiving. And then we apply these to the shortcuts that we make. Because something happened this way, it will happen again this way, is a common way of relating. And specifically in meditation, when one begins practicing, there's all sorts of curiosity and wonder and uncertainty. How do you do it? And then some people sooner, some people later can settle into a way of practicing. Oh, okay, I'm beginning to understand. I'm beginning to understand what this non-judgment is, how to bring kindness. And I can start bringing my attention to my breath, for example, or to my body. And then maybe there's some ease that comes about through that. Maybe there's not. Maybe it's really frustrating, as it is for many people at times. But over time, some people do find ease or a way of being that's different. It's why people keep practicing. And then there's this kind of shorthand. Oh, when I do this, this is what happens in my practice. And practice can work like that for a period of time. But inevitably, it doesn't last. And this just expectations and kind of looking past what's actually happening can kind of set in then. So now I'm no longer really paying attention to my breath. I think I am, but it's more a concept. Oh, I know what my breath is. So now I'm just kind of here, and I'm kind of just here for the amount of time so that I can check practice off, because practice is important to me and it's helpful. Well-meaning intentions, and it's so easy for this to happen in practice, to disconnect from actually practicing to practicing to thinking I'm practicing because I'm here in body, but not necessarily in mind. And so the shorthand ways in which we meet practice and think that we're practicing really can suck the life out of practice. Curious, by a show of hands, has this happened to any of you where you realize, oh, I'm not really practicing. I'm just going through the motions? Yeah, lots of hands. Yeah. I think it's inevitable in practice. It's what the mind does. These shorthand ways that the mind takes are necessary in life in order to function. It can't be new all the time. And yet there's choice around it. And so there's this possibility then of cultivating a beginner's mind, of cultivating a freshness to practice, of a recognition of the fact that, yes, I've practiced with awareness of, say, my hands for a number of years now, and I know I have some idea of what that's like. And any moment, I actually have no idea what it will feel like as I turn toward the sensation in my hands or to my breath. And that when I realize the truth of that, then I'm actually practicing again. Then the possibility of being with practice becomes available. I'm no longer relating to a preconceived concept of what practice is. I'm moving back into this moment. So a few thoughts. It's clear from what you wrote that there's a lot of understanding of what this is. So my sense is that it's not so much a need to understand what beginner's mind is as a reminder of the possibility of beginner's mind. And just considering that, maybe closing your eyes for a moment and bringing this idea, this possibility to mind. That I could meet this moment just as it is. That I could put down whatever ways in which I've practiced so far, and I could bring curiosity to this moment. Noticing what
Right
it
here.
as you acknowledge that. Sorry about that unmuted voice. Okay, so just noticing, you can open your eyes if you close them, just noticing what arose as you did that. Maybe if you'd like to type a word or two in the chat about what you noticed as you brought beginner's mind. A sense of presence and calmness. Some excitement. I felt a sense of renewed energy, ease, arriving in the now. Feeling lighter, hopeful, a different kind of awareness, connecting to myself. Yeah, so isn't that interesting? Just a brief reflection can really bring about a shift. Always being determined to learn something new, a silence, a reminder that I can always learn something new. Great. All right, so let's engage now with a mindfulness practice in which you'll be invited to bring this quality of freshness, of all the different ways in which you've identified what beginner's mind is, however it feels most alive to you. So to start with, inviting you to put one of your hands in front of you. And I have to move my hand away so I can actually see it. And to really look at your hand. To bring this fresh curiosity to this hand. Looking closely at what you see. Perhaps allowing the eyes to narrow down and focus on one particular area. Getting just really curious about one particular area of your hand and noticing what it feels like as you do that. Focusing the attention in this way. And then opening the attention once again to your whole hand and what that's like to take it all in at once. And noticing this way, with this invitation to look at your hand, it could become like an object. So inviting the hand and the space around the hand into your awareness. That there's the figure of the hand and the space that creates it. And what's that like to take it all in, both? Noticing the color of your hand. When I say that, I notice there is no one color. There are many colors. Lots of different colors. What do you notice about the color of your skin? And as you do that, does it evoke any thoughts, emotions? What about the texture of your skin? What do you see in the texture? creases, wrinkles, folds, bumps. Taking in this visual field, and again, noticing what that evokes and bringing kindness to whatever arises. What about the play of light and dark? Where do you notice light areas and dark areas? And noticing where you're looking at your hand. When I invited you to look at your hand, did you automatically open up palm face or the back side of your hand or a fist? And if so, moving your hand now. Curious. When you move your hand in space, what do you notice? What do you perceive? And maybe bringing it to stillness in a different position now, a different orientation to it. And then opening up the vision to take in the periphery, the hand, as well as maybe a much larger background within your room or wherever, whatever space you're in. I'm curious about this hand. Noticing when you go into thinking, and coming back, a fresh start, a beginning each time you come back. And allowing your hand to rest on your lap, if you like, or crossing your hands in front of you, whatever's comfortable. And if you like, you can close your eyes. You can also cast your gaze downward, whatever's supportive. And now bringing your attention right into your hand with the same curious, fresh interest in what it feels like from the inside of this hand, letting go of the visual image of it and feeling it from within. Maybe aware of tingling or pulsing or vibrating. Maybe not. Maybe aware of warmth or coolness, moisture, dryness. Can you feel all of your hand, or what part of it can you feel? Bringing your attention right into the tips of your fingers, if you like. And moving into your fingers and thumb, feeling the curve of them, the bend of each segment. Noticing sensation, the space between your fingers and thumb. Feeling into the palm of your hand, the backside. And opening up once again to your whole hand. Noticing when you go into thinking. It's what minds do, it's not a problem. But here you are back again, back with a fresh start. The possibility of meeting this hand with fresh eyes. And then if you like, opening to both hands, bringing both hands into your awareness now. Noticing what that feels like. curious. Gentle, curious attention. And then an invitation to open your attention even more to your whole body sitting here. The sensation of sitting in a chair, if you're sitting or maybe standing, whatever your situation. What is it you're noticing about this body in this moment? And then we'll begin to bring this practice to a close. So, as you feel ready, you can begin to open your eyes. If you close them, and bring your gaze back up to the screen. We'll reconnect as a group now. So, thank you for that opportunity to practice together. I start off by saying it's a solitary practice, but there is something about practicing in a group, and I feel really grateful when I'm able to practice with a group. So, thank you. So, as I said, I'm going to stop recording now.